Hello, everyone. My name is Dave Simpson, and I'm the Director of Growth Strategy and Development here at Building Impact. As many of you know, our organization works to strengthen the community by providing volunteer opportunities to companies and buildings around Greater Boston. I'm super fortunate today to have the opportunity to introduce our webinar, which is called CSR during COVID-19, Social Impact while Social Distancing. And I'm grateful that we all get to hear from three incredible CSR professionals who have been helping their companies to make social impact during this period of social distancing. And so, as many of you may know, BI has recently pivoted to introduce a virtual volunteering platform in response to COVID-19. And we've done this to engage volunteers and to support our network of nonprofit organizations in Boston. As I'm sure you know, due to safety concerns, it's really hard for volunteers to be in person right now. But we recognize that the needs in our community, regardless, they're still high. When you think about food insecurity, when you think about the lack of hygiene products, or even when you think about senior isolation. And so in partnership with our community partners, our team has been able to pivot, and we found new ways that volunteers can answer these needs virtually. And I'm excited to share that just this week, our network has actually surpassed the 1,000 virtual volunteer mark, which is really amazing for everyone who has joined in on our efforts. And the three folks that you'll hear from today, Amy, Itzel, and Sarah, they've been really instrumental in helping us to launch this platform and to engage our teams. What I want to do now, though, is first just introduce our webinar moderator, Christina Costa. Christina is not only a BC alum like myself, but she's also a convener in the community. And she was actually a part of Building Impact's inaugural cohort of Impact Fellows. And an Impact Fellow is this diverse cohort of socially minded professionals who want to make an impact in their community. And so she was a part of that professional development program last year, and we're excited to invite her again today to be a moderator for this panel. Christina has been working in the tech industry for the last 5 years, where she's held roles in consulting, digital marketing, diversity and inclusion. She's even done some customer success work, and she's also been a project manager. She's passionate about building and empowering inclusive spaces in real life or virtual, so that everybody could kind of just be their authentic self. And she even helps to run this organization called Women with Purpose, which was founded to provide professional development opportunities for women of color. And so I'm looking forward to her engaging in the dialogue with you guys today. And now I'll pass it off to her to introduce our three panelists.
Thank you so much, Dave, for that kind introduction. And good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday, TGIF. It's beautiful out, and I'm so glad that you're here and joining us. I am so excited today to introduce our three speakers, Amy, Itzel, and Sarah. They're all corporate social responsibility leaders in their respective companies. So we're definitely going to be going into a deep dive with them today and learning a little bit more about their volunteer efforts, corporate giving, and also how are they supporting the community during this difficult time. So without further ado, let me introduce our amazing panelists. So first we have Sarah Sharland. She's the Site Affairs and Operations Manager at Pfizer. Sarah is the Kendall Square Site Affairs and Operations Manager, where she devotes much of her attention to colleague engagement. During her 6 years at Pfizer, Sarah consistently has strived to make her site the most productive, engaging place to work. She has her BS in Business Administration from Framingham State University and her MBA from Endicott College. And outside of work, Sarah loves learning new things, making various crafts, volunteering, and spending time with loved ones. So please welcome Sarah. Next, I'd love to introduce Itzel Delgado. Itzel is a community investment specialist at the investment management firm Loomis Sales and Company, where she coordinates the corporate volunteer program and partners with various nonprofit partners in the greater Boston area. Additionally, Itzel is the co-founder and co-leader of Mosaic, the first multicultural employee resource group at Loomis Sales and Company. Mosaic, multicultural organization supporting an inclusive community, focuses on creating inclusive workspace environments to help support, retain, and attract diverse talent while increasing cultural awareness at the firm. Thank you, Itzel, for joining us. And last but not least, we have Amy Wendel. Amy is the Global Head of Corporate Social Responsibility at Log Me In, where she oversees philanthropy, social impact, and sustainability programs. Amy founded the CSR program back in 2014, wow, and has prior experience in marketing and operations at LogMeIn and small startup tech companies throughout the area. Amy built the company's social impact and sustainability efforts from the ground up, relying on expertise she gained through working in tech startups, the corporate world, and the nonprofit sector. In her free time, Amy also runs a small nonprofit called Project Mima that she founded in 2010, which supports over 200 students in the Kilimanjaro region of Tanzania, East Africa. That's pretty freaking awesome. So as you can see, each of these women are leading the efforts in social impact for their companies for quite a few years now. So we're going to be diving into asking a little bit more about these larger initiatives and then talking about how you have all adapted or changed your CSR approach throughout this pandemic and COVID-19 situation that we all are in right now. So without further ado, I have my first question, and this is actually for Amy. Amy, so your company's volunteer engagement program is known as Mission Possible. Can you please talk a little bit about Mission Possible and maybe an example of a project that you've headed there?
Absolutely, and thank you, Building Impact and Christina, for having me today. I'm really happy to be here on a Friday. Yeah, so I work at LogMeIn. We are a software company based here in Boston, and we have about 4,000 employees in 12 different countries and about 20 different offices. So we're spread out over the world, and Mission Possible really aims to just make things possible in the community. And last year, we did about 165 volunteer days globally in those 12 different countries. So our employees are really, really passionate about giving back and volunteering. And, the volunteering looks anything like, volunteering for an hour at a food bank or doing different supply drives in our offices to, larger scale volunteer days, like with Building Impact, their Guppy Tank, for example, their STEM workshop for children, which is like a day-long workshop. So 165 days globally, annually, and really kind of across the board with the different organizations we support.
Wow, that's really impressive. Thank you for sharing. Let's actually dive a little bit more into that, Amy. So how did you, start Mission Possible? Like, how did you start that?
Yeah, so I came to the company actually via acquisition, which was a whole interesting thing in itself. And when I got to the company, they had a very small charitable committee that was being run by some lovely ladies in HR. And because of my prior experience running a nonprofit in Tanzania and just having, this innate passion for giving back to our communities, when I found out that this charitable committee existed at LogMeIn, I said, I want to be involved and I sort of want to take it over. So I did that, and I ran that charitable committee on the side of my marketing and operation roles until the point where it just grew and grew and grew to be so big. And then the company was growing that it needed to be someone's full-time job. So it was offered to me by our CEO.
That's amazing. So you were totally proactive and made it happen for yourself. That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I would love to move on. I would love to learn a little bit more now about Itzel. So Itzel, you are the co-founder of the Mosaic Employee Resource Group at Loomis, and you've helped in spearheading social impact work with that group. Please let us know, talk a little bit about Mosaic and maybe an example program that you've launched there, and how did you kind of get the starting with that? How did you were you also similar to Amy and you were very proactive and just decided this is what I want to do, or was it someone that helped you, or would love to hear more about that story?
Sure, and thank you for having me here today. So Mosaic was definitely something similar. It was a few colleagues and myself who were super eager to have a community where people of color and allies could come together to really promote a culture of diversity and inclusion at the firm. There really wasn't a space to do that yet, so we were really excited to be able to create something like that. So our focus has really been to celebrate diversity, so doing cultural celebrations and highlights, but also to be able to provide professional development opportunities and networking opportunities for people of color at the firm, but then also to really engage them in community work. So we partner with our volunteer council and community investment. So I kind of serve both roles there to be able to also engage our members in volunteering. And since our launch in October 2018, we've done many things. So it's very hard to focus on one. So I'll kind of cover a few briefly that have been pretty successful. So pretty early on when we launched, we wanted to make sure that we were having regular communication and a presence amongst our members. So we created a fun and informative newsletter that goes on a monthly basis, where we make sure to highlight cultural celebrations that are coming up and really make them informative and fun for people, usually including things that they can check out or recipes they can try, activities they can do at home. And so really trying to make it informative but fun. We tried to highlight DEI articles and then also upcoming events that our group is hosting. So some of the events that we have hosted, again, have really focused on trying to celebrate diversity. So a lot of cultural highlighting and informative events that are still very fun. So some of the events that we have highlighted and cultural highlights that we've had are the Lunar New Year, Black History Month. We've done things on the Day of the Dead, Diwali, and many others. And we really try to make it fun. So when we were in the office, we used to send out a presentation with information on the cultural highlight, and then we would put cultural foods in the office kitchen so that people could go out and try it. And then we'd have like a little background history on what the food was and the meaning it had and the symbolism for that culture. So that was really, really fun to be able to do, to just like really engage them and create learning opportunities for our members. So that has been really incredible. And I feel like these events and highlights have really created natural opportunities for us to have these conversations about diversity and ways that we can all support one another.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm curious, how do you engage people who are not part of that diversity group, right? How do you engage maybe like allies at Loomis?
Yeah, so we actually have asked ourselves a lot of that. We've tried to be very intentional about that. We want it to be a support for people of color, but for allies to feel like they have a space and a role there as well. So we've definitely partnered with other ERGs like the Women's Network to create workshops where we can come and discuss all the intersectionality of like being a woman, being a person of color, being an ally. So we've had workshops like that. We had a talk, we had a woman come in and talk about like what it is to be white and how you can be an ally and contribute to the efforts. And then really just creating the safe space to be able to ask questions and create spaces like lunch and learns where we can all go through those questions together and share each other's realities, both people of color and the white perspective as well, to be able to come together and have those safe spaces, I think, has been our goal.
Great. No, thank you. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Let's move on to Sarah now. So Sarah, I know that you've led many projects with your team on site in Cambridge, including a large day of service each year. Can you please talk about the engagement of volunteers in your life sciences company and how this idea of day of service changes how does that change this year due to coronavirus and the current pandemic and situation we're all in?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me, and thank you to everybody who's dialed in today, and happy Friday, like Christina said. So I work for Pfizer, which is a global company. So we have 90,000 employees over 120 countries, which is a little insane when you think about it. But I actually work at the Kendall Square site in Cambridge. So as many of you know, Kendall Square is known as like the innovative mile, the most innovative mile in the world or something like that. So we are surrounded by amazing companies who are also our competitors. And when a few years ago, we realized we need to do more to support our colleagues and to really engage them. So that's when our group, the Site Affairs group, was formed. And a big part of engagement we realized is that our colleagues wanted to give back. We have wonderful colleagues who are in the lab their whole lives, basically working to find ways to bring medicines to patients, but they want to do even more than that. They want to give back. So about 3 years ago, we had our first annual day of service, and this year it'll be our fourth. Yeah, I think we're on our 4th year already, which is amazing. Time goes by so fast. Last year, we actually had 50% of the population who were on site that day participate, which was huge. So we always track those metrics, and we're really proud of that. So this year, we decided to work with Building Impact. So I've worked with Building Impact for a few months now. I actually got connected to them through our facilities group, which is Bullfinch. And we've done a bunch of different things when the site was open. We did some pop-up volunteer activities, and we've since done some virtual activities with them as well, which I'll talk about a bit later. So we were trying to be very proactive, and in the fall, we started talking about hosting an in-person day of service on June 9th. Well, it's May 29th, so I think it's safe to say that June 9th is not happening. So we have tentatively scheduled it towards the end of the year in December. But what I am working with Dave and Bridget on is basically coming up with a plan where we can have some virtual activities, maybe once a quarter or once a month, up until the day we're all back on site and can actually do something in person. So I have to give Building Impact a lot of credit and a lot of kudos, because they were so quick to change their model to adapt it to be virtual. It was amazing. So before I even considered it, they were like, hey, by the way, you can do this virtually. So it's been really amazing. So day service, we think, is going to look a lot different this year. We don't even know if we'll end up having like an on-site day or if we'll do it all virtually, but very excited to be doing the planning there and kind of seeing how it all shapes up.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that, Sarah. I'm just curious about day of service. Is there like a different theme every year, or how does that work for you?
Sure. So we don't necessarily do a theme, but we try to connect projects that are either related to our mission or helping people. And one of the reasons why we chose to work with Building Impact this year is because they are so in tune with our local community in Boston and in Cambridge. It felt like we could really make a difference and meet the needs of what our neighbors basically need right now. So to me, that was just such a huge selling point and really important, because people want to know that if they're putting a hygiene kit together, that it's actually going to go to somebody in the community.
Oh, that's great to hear. And I agree. I think, starting with your community first and making that impact is really, really important. And then you can kind of diverge into different communities. And I think that's awesome. Thanks for sharing, Sarah. So as we can all see here, these 3 women are amazing, right? And have led some really great initiatives that have impacted the community in a positive way. And so I'm sure some people in the audience want to know, what advice do you have for anyone who's trying to start a corporate social responsibility project or program at their company? What advice would you have for them to start that? And anyone feel free to share, Amy or Sarah, if you'd like.
Yeah, I'll start. I think, I think it's okay to start small, and it's okay if it's really grassroots at the beginning. And I think one piece of advice is, if you have multiple offices, or even if you just have one office, identifying a few people in that office that are really passionate about giving back and forming a small committee or, group of ambassadors that can, help with the different projects and lead them. I think that's really helpful, and they can identify partners within the community that they can work with. So I think, rallying the troops in your company is definitely a great way to start. And if you start with one volunteer project, great, see how it goes, get feedback and then iterate and move on to your next. But I think there's, no fear in just starting small.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to reiterate, Sarah, right before you go, I think it's also important to reiterate that a lot of these nonprofits out there are looking for people to partner with, right? They would love to have more of that partnership opportunities to expand their reach. So that's another thing I think to just keep in mind. And Sarah, sorry if I cut you off. Please share. What advice do you have for anyone who's trying to start a project, a corporate social
Yeah,
responsibility.
no problem at all. So I definitely have to agree with Amy that you can start small. So when we had our first volunteer project a few years ago, it wasn't a day of service. It was maybe every quarter or twice a year we would do some activity that was sort of brought to our attention. So my biggest advice would be to start small, and it could be something as simple as doing a drive. A canned food drive. All you really need is a couple boxes in the lobby and some signs, and you'd be surprised how many people catch on. And the more you do, I find the more that people want to do more. So just start small, and I would suggest finding at least one key stakeholder in the company who can kind of support you and help get that message across, because a lot of the colleagues that I work with find that they just want to know that it's okay that they're stepping away from their desk to do this hour volunteer project, or, you know, bringing goods in. And I found that 99% of the time there's no problem whatsoever, but sometimes they need that reassurance that it's okay to step away from their desk, or actually now with virtual volunteering, they don't even have to leave their desk. So just having somebody who can help support your efforts, and start small.
I love that. I think that's all great advice. And I also want to just reiterate that I don't think people always have to wait for permission. You know, do it. Be proactive. And I tell people that all the time. If there's something that you see out there that you really calls to you and you think you could make a difference, do it. Right? Thank you guys for sharing. My next question, I would like to know, and this for anyone who wants to answer, but how have you adapted or changed your corporate social responsibility approach during coronavirus? Can you maybe talk about a project that you've done through virtual volunteering, and the need your team was actually addressing in the community through this virtual volunteering project?
I can jump in. So community investments has really been working hard to try to find virtual opportunities for our employees to be able to give and volunteer. And Building Impact has been actually super helpful in providing these opportunities through their virtual volunteering platform. And we've participated in quite a few of the opportunities that they have offered. So we've done the beauty and hygiene kits for the Women's Lunch Place in Pine Street Inn. That one was really, really great because everyone is home with their kids, and we got a lot of feedback that it was a really great opportunity for employees and to engage their children. And to give them an activity to do, but also a reminder to them that there are people less fortunate than them, and that had a lot of great feedback. So we really loved those. We also did a virtual gift card drive for grocery gift cards with Family Aid, and that one was really amazing. We definitely had a lot of people participate in that. And we were just really moved to see how many people, how many of our employees were participating in that. So we actually allowed our matching gift program to match all of the gifts with those gift cards to double the impact there. So that one was really, really amazing for us. But I think that the one that has been the most successful and has had, was super popular as soon as we put it out, the 10 spots were gone. So we were participating in a phone tree where our volunteers are calling isolated seniors to check in on their needs, and just chat with them. And I recently spoke with one of our volunteers who's participating, and she shared just how much she's been loving chatting with her senior partner. He has admitted to her that he is feeling lonely and he has medical needs, but he's super sharp. He has a super sharp mind and really just wants someone to talk to. And she's been that partner for him. And he also reached out recently to the organization on his end, to the coordinators on his end, to tell them that he is loving the calls, and he is loving her as an intellectual friend. So he's calling her an intellectual friend. He's getting that stimulation from her in that company. So that's been really amazing to see. And I think that this opportunity has been great too, because it is a longer commitment. So it is a 4-week commitment for our volunteers. And our volunteer shared that she particularly loved this opportunity because it is a longer term. She's able to see the fruits of her labor, the services she's providing to this gentleman. So that's been really impactful. And I think that gives volunteer the opportunity to see the impact that their service is having. And that's something that sometimes is lacking. We're finding out, right, in these virtual opportunities, is you just kind of put it out there and you know it's going to someone in need, but you don't really get to see the outcome of it. So this has been really, really great for that.
I love all those stories so much. And I'm sure the people who volunteer also feel so fulfilled after doing that too. And it's a great feeling. Does anyone else want to share how their approach has kind of changed in this virtual world we're living in now?
Yeah, I can go. And I just want to be like super real to start. Like, this is hard work on a normal day, you know, nonprofit work, CSR work. It takes a lot out of us. And, you know, so many of us, it's often who we are and not what we do also. So it's tough work. And I feel like, you know, in March when I started working from home, I just thought, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to positively impact our communities when we can't go on site and volunteer? And I feel like there was like a good week and a half where I just was, you know, like a deer in headlights. I didn't know what to do. And then, you know, I started reading, there started to be like a lot of sort of CSR industry reports coming out and webinars and just people really coming together and, you know, talking about this and talking about different ways, you know, we could, you know, go forward sort of in this new environment. And one thing that we stood up immediately at LogMeIn was a Doers for LogMeIn Dollars program. So so two things, we were matching employee financial contributions to direct relief. And then if employees were going to volunteer, and that could have been, you know, an hour with Building Impact in a virtual volunteering event, or if it was going to be something on their own, like, you know, getting groceries for an elderly neighbor, we would match their volunteer time $50 per hour, and that goes to direct relief. So we've run that campaign for 2 months now. And so we started with that, and I was really seeking out partners that were offering different virtual volunteer opportunities, and it was really tough. There's just not that many because we haven't really had to, you know, do too much of it. And so I was so excited when Building Impact emailed me, I think it was at the end of March, and it was about their April Earth Month project, which was the virtual volunteering for Boston Public School students putting together seedling kits. And so I remember getting that, and I was thrilled that a partner was, you know, looking at different innovative ways to give back. So we immediately did that, which was really successful, and the volunteers had a great time working with David on that. And I'm really excited because we just signed on with Building Impact to do more virtual volunteer activities through June, July, and August. And we're going to actually pivot those a little bit because as I mentioned at the beginning, you know, we operate in a lot of different offices across the world, and I've had a hard time finding partners like Building Impact in Santa Barbara and in Arizona and in sort of our other different locations. So I'll be opening up our June, July, and August virtual opportunities to all of our U.S. employees, which I'm really excited about. So, yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And that's going to impact a lot of people. LogMeIn's huge. So that's going to be amazing. Sarah, did you want to share anything that you've been doing to kind of approach this?
Sure. So it's just funny to think back when this all started in March. I remember thinking, oh, June 9th, we'll be fine. We'll all be back on site. We can do our day of service. It's going to be awesome. So it's just kind of funny to think back because none of us really knew how this would be impacted. So honestly, at first, I wasn't even thinking about any volunteer opportunities because I thought it would be a 2-week thing. So when Building Impact reached out to me about their virtual volunteering, I was excited. I'm not going to lie, a little skeptical because I wasn't sure how it would go. But for instance, we did the same project that Izel's group did with the beauty and personal care kits for the women's lunch place. And it was really awesome because normally you would go, you'd be in a room, you'd get to go down the assembly line, put everything in the kit, write a note. So I was like, how are we going to still have that impact and feel like we're connecting? But they made such a beautiful platform. You felt so engaged. So like the first step was to pick whatever color case you want to put it in. And so it had like 4 cases. And then the next one was, which shampoo do you want to put in? And I think there was probably 6 or 8 options. And then at the end, it just felt really cool. It was like online shopping for other people and not with your own money. And it was just a really fun experience, and it was quick, so people could, do it quickly. And then at the end, you actually got to write a note, and then the building impact staff actually would write whatever you put and handwrite it on a message. And then unfortunately, because of HIPAA and rules, we couldn't actually see any of the women that they went to, but Bridget did send me an awesome photo that showed her delivering the product. So I really, really suggest to anybody if they're interested to do the virtual volunteering, because it's really an easy lift. Building Impact does all the hard work, and it is very impactful. And it's just great to know that, hey, I just made a kit that's going to go to somebody in need. So
thank you so much for sharing. I think that that's really, it's so empowering that there are programs like Building Impact that are doing that, the quote unquote hard work, and so that other people can get involved in giving back, because now more than ever, people need that, right? So also kind of piggybacking off that question, so a key component to serving together is also building this community within your teams. I think all of you discussed how you started building these communities and finding people who are really passionate about giving back. So now that we are in this virtual world, right, how are you getting the word out to volunteers and getting folks involved now? I'm sure before it was like you saw them in the office and you got everybody excited together, but how is it now in this virtual world for you guys to get them involved in volunteering?
I can answer just basically what we've been doing. So we are on the Microsoft Teams platform. And so before, nobody was really using it as much as they probably should. And then we all became virtual. So I created a team that put every single person at our site on it. And so I've been advertising on there, but the way I found that got to the most people was working directly with one of our CRGs, which is the equivalent of other companies' ERGs, so colleague resource groups. And basically I targeted a certain group. So I went to our Women's Leadership Network group, or Pfizer's Women Resource Group rather, and sent them and said, hey, like, this is helping women at Women's Lunch Place. And the response was immediate. So I think it helps if you can kind of target a certain ERG or CRG, as well as just advertise to the broader audience.
And I guess just to piggyback, are you using Zoom, or like what are you doing to get people kind of engaged in volunteering and letting them know what the ask is for them?
Yeah, so it's basically all posting to like these virtual formats, like the team format, and we have a weekly newsletter. So before we'd use boards like virtual e-signs within our building or posters. So it's had to be all virtual. So just posting basically in the online forums and then sharing via our newsletters or a quick email.
Great.
And luckily it's been working for us. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Amy and Itzel, do you guys want to talk a little bit about how you've been engaging your teams now in this virtual reality world we're in?
Yeah, I actually feel like for us, nothing has changed as far as communications. There's emails, and then we're a big Slack user. So there's a lot of Slack channels, and we have a few dedicated Slack channels just for Mission Possible. And then we have a dedicated Slack channel for our Mission Possible committee. And so there's a ton of engagement on both of those channels. And there's just constant posts and opportunities, and people are letting us know what they're doing in the communities there. So big Slack fan.
Yeah, I live and breathe Slack, so I know.
Yeah,
I know how
me too.
I know how you feel. What about you, Itzel? What have you been using at Loomis?
Yeah, so I think very similar to Amy, our communication style hasn't changed too much. But what we are trying to do is to continue highlighting those volunteers, because now more than ever, I think it's great to highlight those people that are going above and beyond and still finding ways to get involved and to give. So right now we're working on doing a volunteer highlight on our intranet page, and it'll also go out to the entire firm just to highlight one volunteer that we've really been seeing. She also happens to be the woman who I shared about during the phone call to the senior, but she's been on every single thing that we've put out. We've seen her matching gifts come through on and off all throughout this time. So she's been super, super engaged, and we want to make sure to highlight volunteers that are doing that, to encourage them, but also to encourage others to engage as well. And then we also have a weekly email that's going out from our CEO, kind of giving us updates on all this madness, and he's doing kind of shout outs to people, to teams and people that are doing amazing work. So we made sure that there was a tidbit with the names of the people that are participating in this phone tree to making phone calls to isolated seniors, so that they get that recognition that I think is really important to get people to feel appreciated for the work that they're doing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Thank you guys for sharing so much. As you can see, these women have found creative, innovative ways to still give back to the community and obviously making an impact in a lot of people's lives in different ways. Thank you all for the work that you do. We are wrapping up the panel discussion because we want to give time for you all to ask your questions. I'm sure many of you have your own specific questions for these wonderful ladies. So if you do have any questions, if you could please write them in the chat, or you could raise your hand and we can call on you to ask your question. And I know that before we go into question and answer session, I know Dave would love to talk a little bit about Building Impact's virtual volunteering platform. I certainly want to learn more about it. So Dave, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Christina. And I just want to first and foremost thank Amy, Sarah, and Itzel for their time today and for just being candid with the way that you guys have been approaching virtual volunteering. Like, you know, there's no blueprint for it. So I appreciate you guys just telling us the way that you've been thinking about it and how you've been looking at it from an organizational lens. In terms of our virtual volunteering, for those who are listening in who would like to be involved and get their teams involved in virtual volunteering, you can find out more about our programming by going on our website, which is buildingimpact.org. There, you will learn a little bit more about the virtual kit program that Sarah and Amy mentioned that they did, where they were able to get their teams involved in actually assembling a kit virtually, which would then be physically assembled and dropped off to a community partner in need. So I know Sarah talked a little bit about the hygiene program that we ran, where her volunteers created hygiene product kits that were then dropped off. In terms of some longer form things, we also have the opportunity to synchronize different events on the same day. So as you heard Sarah say, she mentioned talking a little bit more about creating a virtual day of service where your employees can actually do a sequence of events all on the same day, and you can measure the opportunity to see their impact. Similar to Itzel mentioned, you also have the chance to do some things that are more skill-based, right, with your team. So something like the phone tree that she mentioned, where your employees actually have to leverage their skills and put them to use to engage their community. And as you know, from what Amy said, we're looking at seeing how we can move things nationally and engage people anywhere with our programs. The one thing that I wanted to highlight in particular was our virtual donation drive. I know you heard Itzel talk a little bit about the donation drive that we had last month, where we engaged our gift cards for grocery program. This upcoming month, we actually have a summer hunger drive that we're doing virtually. And so, as some of you may have seen in the news or even the Globe this past weekend, the rising need for food in our community is great. You know, the application for SNAP's benefit has gone up 360%, and the low inventory that Boston food pantries have is forcing them to close. And so right now, starting June 1st all the way through June 30th, we're working with 4 local food pantries to help them deliver food to families to help combat food insecurity during COVID-19. I'm sure you guys know that, you know, food pantries are not really accepting donations from individuals at this time. And so the drive that we're hosting is completely virtual, like I said, on our website. And after the call, I will send you guys some follow-up information about it if you would love to learn how your team can participate. But you guys have the opportunity to go on virtually and to give a contribution, and 100% of your contribution will go directly to those 4 local food pantry organizations that we're working with, because we recognize that the need right now is very high. The final thing that I will say about our virtual volunteering opportunities is we also have a few programs that you and your family can do yourself. We have a really neat gratitude board on our website where you and your family can upload a short video or picture, and just send a note of encouragement to somebody on the front lines. And so we have that program available for you and your families to upload a nice message. And we also have a letter writing program for some isolated seniors if you would like to just do it old school and write a snail mail letter to somebody who's in need at this time.
Thank you for sharing that, Dave. And as someone who is very, very, very close to my grandmother and she lives alone, I will say that those types of programs are really, really impactful. A lot of these seniors are very isolated. Many of them aren't able to go even to the supermarket, shop for themselves. So don't forget about our seniors. I love my grandma. So thank you for sharing that, Dave. So we're going to answer a few questions now from the audience. So what I'm going to do is I'll read the question out loud, and then whoever would like to answer, feel free to just unmute yourself, raise your hand, or unmute yourself. So one of the questions we received was, how important is it for your volunteers to be contributing to local organizations versus, I guess, national organizations?
I can take that one. So I found that with our colleagues, they love to give back, but they really want to give back to the community that we're in. So I think part of it has to do with the fact that the Cambridge landscape has changed so much over the years. And now there's just so many businesses, so many buildings. I think our colleagues just want to know that they're giving back to this amazing community that's really kind of opened up their arms to all of these major companies. So I think they like giving to big organizations too, like a Red Cross or something more national. But when it comes down to it, they like to go to the specific neighborhood that we're in basically 40 hours a week when we're in normal operating times. And they just want to know that they're helping the area that's basically like their second home.
Yeah,
that would make sense. I see that a lot as well. And I think with our employees, I think it really depends on the employee. I know there's people that really love to support organizations like Direct Relief that is acting globally in a lot of our local locations, and they're happy to contribute. And then there's, some people that really just want to give back to that small grassroots nonprofit or NGO that's working in our Bangalore area. So I feel like it just kind of depends on the person and their preference when it comes back to giving. But we try to provide opportunities that do both, since we know that.
Thank you for sharing. Itzel, did you want to add anything, or should I move on to the next question?
I'll just add that our mission is really focused on the communities in Greater Boston that are in need, specifically in healthcare and education. So a lot of what we put out, the opportunities that we put out for our employees are going to be in those areas, and we see a lot of support from our employees for those organizations, because we also tried to find ways to expose them to the work that these organizations do, and they know that it's our second home, like Sarah was saying, when we are actually in our offices, that's our second home. But we also, through the matching gift program, we support allowing employees to give where they want to give as well. And we always try to make sure that we're aligning to at least the interests that they have. So if there's interest in healthcare and giving to education, that we are aligning there.
Great. Thank you guys for sharing. I see another question here that says, how do you balance programs that are focused on volunteering versus just giving? If anyone wants to touch upon that, that'd be awesome. And I'll repeat it again. How do you balance programs, or I guess balance managing programs that are based upon volunteering versus just giving to an organization?
I think for Log Me In, I would say like 85% of the organizations we are donating dollars to, whether it's a micro grant or a grant, those are organizations that we are that we're partnering with and that we're volunteering with in our local communities. So I think it definitely tilts that way for us.
I would say at the site level, it's more local and hands-on volunteering, so something like the virtual volunteering. But at the corporate level, we also have a matching program, so then you can give to any organization, and that's just straight up giving, and they'll match it. But the great thing is there are obviously like the major charities on there, but I actually went on and was able to still give to my local food bank in Beverly where I live, and they were able to match it as well. So I don't think it's something that we really consciously do. It just seems to be more like our headquarters is focusing on more broad, like actual just giving, whereas at the site level, we try to do something a little bit more hands-on, even if it's virtual hands-on. But.
Yeah, I agree. We're very similar in that. So we have our core nonprofits that we give to on an annual basis, and that's not going to change too much. This pandemic obviously has created a whole different schedule, everything and volunteering for everyone. So I think that currently that has changed, where as before our annual giving was kind of set for the most part. It was set to who it was going to go to and how much was going to go to each organization. And then we used to have a schedule of at least 1 to 2 volunteer opportunities a month for the calendar year. So that's kind of how we used to operate before. Right now, we are obviously not volunteering in person, so we've been jumping on any virtual volunteering opportunities that we can do. So I think that it definitely has leaned more towards giving financially than volunteering, just because of the lack of virtual volunteer opportunities that are available. So I think it's just kind of reading the times, and right now it's a time to give financially. So we were initially sending out weekly emails highlighting some of our nonprofits that are doing work in the greater Boston area that has been hit really hard by this pandemic. So that's kind of what we've been doing is highlighting some of those organizations, and then some of the bigger organizations too that are doing great work.
Thank you. Those are all really great suggestions. Thanks for sharing. I have a few more questions here. I want to make sure we have time for them. So one of them, somebody asked, how do you track the time and dollars of the impact your teams are making through your programs? Or how would you recommend tracking maybe the time and dollars of the impact you're making?
I have just a manual Excel spreadsheet that I meticulously update. And, I'm pulling in volunteer hours from Workday where they're logged, and for the people that don't log their hours in Workday, which it happens, right? I track down the data from, the systems that we're, intaking people from. So it's just, for me, it's like very manual in Excel. I'm sure that there's other companies that have like really amazing ways of tracking, but pretty old school for us, but effective.
Yeah.
To be transparent, again, at the corporate level, they do a great job of that. I'm not gonna lie, I don't do the best job of that at the site, which again is one of the reasons why I went with Building Impact this year for our day of service, because they're great at reporting back like number of hours. Because besides that, we were doing what Amy was doing and like trying to pull in from all these sources, and people aren't often like, hey, I volunteered X amount of hours today. They might not just offer it up. So again, just to kind of plug Building Impact, that's another reason why I really like them, because they tell me that data. So like I have a list right here that tells me how many people participated in the beauty and personal hygiene kits, the hygiene kits for those at a local shelter, and the family aid donation. So I don't have to do it manually, luckily, when I work with them.
Yeah. And I'm assuming because you work at such a large company, higher up to CEO, whoever it is you're reporting to wants to see that information, right? Especially if they're giving you funding for this particular program. So that's really important.
Yep.
Is there anything that you do at Loomis to help track kind of the donations and the impact?
We are not exciting. we have an internal platform that was created for us where people can submit their volunteer time off requests for their paid time off that we offer. It's challenging to get people to use it if they're doing their own personal stuff on their own time. So that's something that we notice we end up kind of missing out on. But for volunteer opportunities that we coordinate and we host, I kind of just hunt people down and make sure that they submit their volunteer time off. So if I saw so-and-so and so-and-so there, but I haven't seen a volunteer time off request come through, I ask them to submit that just so that we can have that on file and be able to track that and share that with our CEO and our giving committee to show them where our people are volunteering and the sorts of things they're interested in. But I know that I think Salesforce has a really good platform, and there's quite a few out there, but for privacy reasons, we haven't been able to sign on to any of those.
Awesome. It sounds like it really relies on the three of you, right, to keep track of everything and make sure that everything's running, which I'm sure is a lot of work, but worth it at the end. We have a few more questions. So my next question, how important is it to have a partner to design these projects with, so to work with nonprofits in your ecosystem? So for example, food pantries right now, they can't take individual food donations due to safety. So you have to design a virtual drive. How important is it to have a partner to help design these projects with?
It is so extremely important and helpful. You can try to sort of replicate what Building Impact has done, but it would just take you so much time to do. They've done all the work for us, and we know that it's impactful. They've done all the vetting, and CSR folks, like, there's usually not many of us in a company. Companies are lucky to have one. I'm sure, Sarah, at Pfizer, you have like a much larger team, but at smaller companies, there's often just one person, and I'm in charge of so many other things. So I don't have the time to sort of put these things together. So partners like Building Impact are just so helpful and amazing with their innovative platforms like this, in my opinion.
I'll also jump in and say, working directly with nonprofits, I know Building Impact is kind of a middleman in that they connect with other nonprofits that need certain services. But just even connecting with directly with the nonprofits that you already give to or partner with is great. Like we reached out to all of our nonprofit partners in March when we all started working from home. And we partnered with Artists for Humanity, who we already give to on an annual basis, just to see what are your needs right now. Artists for Humanity serves under-resourced teams by providing artistic work for them. So we asked them, like, what are your needs right now? What do your teams need? And it turns out they needed laptops to be able to continue their work remotely and get paid for them. So we reached out to our employees and got donated laptops. So we wouldn't have known that need was there if we wouldn't have partnered with them. So I think it's also the partnership is so important because we know that there's a food need, we know that there's a need for masks, we know that the general needs, but we don't know the little specific needs like this one that we ran into.
Thank you. I love what you said about meeting the partners where they're at, right? Because that's one thing when I did the Building Impacts Fellows program last year, that's one thing I learned a lot about was how to actually be helpful, right? Instead of kind of putting your own agenda onto a partner or a nonprofit, actually asking them, what do they need? Do they need 100 volunteers on site, or do they need funding for laptops, right? It's meeting them where they're at. So I love that you mentioned that itself. Sarah, I don't know if you want to add anything to that question. If not, we can move on. I know I also just want to emphasize that Building Impact does keep track of reporting, just as Amy mentioned. They measure the impact of all programs, projects, and days of service so that their clients and nonprofit community partners can view the value and that they're adding to their local communities and to their organizations. So that's really, really important. So with that said, there's 5 minutes left. I want to make sure we have enough time and wrap up. So thank you again to our amazing panelists, not only for attending today and sharing your insights and how you've been innovative throughout this virtual world we're living in right now for God knows how long, but also for all of the work that you're doing in the community and to make a positive impact for people, especially people who need it the most right now. So with that said, I will pass it on to Dave.
I don't think I could have said it better myself. I just wanted to thank you guys all for, first and foremost, again, for spending the time to come do this webinar and just to give people some insight into this world that you guys live in every day. And then I just want to send a special thank you to the people who found the time to actually join and to listen in. Really appreciate it. And we'll be sure to send you some additional information if you would like to learn a little bit more about our programming. And before I finally wrap it up, I also just want to give Christina the opportunity to actually talk a little bit more about a professional development workshop / summit that her organization, Women with Purpose, is hosting tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Dave. So in spirit of not asking for permission and just doing things, that's kind of how I've run my organization for the past 5 years. 5 years, which is crazy to think about. So for me, my mission in life is to impact and really have a positive impact on women of color. As many of you know, they are the most marginalized in this country and the most widely affected right now financially due to coronavirus. So with that said, my organization, Women with Purpose, has partnered with actually a few other nonprofits in the area, such as GLOW, Boston GLOW, that works with women's leadership, and the Creolas Professional Association, and also Tomorrow's Prosperity Group, to bring a financial empowerment summit that we're actually hosting tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We're going to have a series of amazing women who all work in finance, whether they're wealth consultants or financial advisors, just sharing some really useful information for women right now to protect themselves financially. I think Dave will be sharing the link in the chat. And of course, we also have a discount code if you want to share for free tickets. At this point, I don't want there to be any barrier of entry for people to join this event. So would love if you could share with anyone who could benefit from this virtual summit tomorrow. Really appreciate it. And thank you guys all again for the work that you do, and Bridget for being the innovative queen that you are, and for helping as many communities as you do, and for building impact. So I appreciate all the work that you do, Bridget, and everyone here in this room. Oh, there she is. Thank you for all that you do for the community, Bridget. You are amazing. And I really am appreciative for being here.
I just wanted to echo the thanks that we have for all of you. Building impact is truly a network, and it's a network of volunteers. And as Itzel described so perfectly, we sit in the middle. We're a nonprofit organization, but we sit in the middle, and our function is to try to strengthen the community by bringing folks together. So thank you for doing that for us today, Christina, virtually, and having us all come together. And thank you again, as Dave said, to each of our panelists, not only for being here today, for everything you do day in and day out as a partner with us. We couldn't do it without you. So thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy your day, everyone. It's beautiful out.